When I was 18, I had appendicitis, and I woke up one morning and I knew that I was going to die. And I told my aunt, and she said, "Oh, you're just being dramatic." And I said, "No." I said, "I really feel like I'm going to die. I'm on fire inside." And so we went to a doctor. Doctor didn't find anything wrong with me. And so I was sent back home. And while I was at home, I had another aunt visiting from Israel, and she remembered her son when he had appendicitis, mentioned that he felt like he was on fire. And so she took me to a private hospital and put me in hospital. They took blood work, but I guess nobody looked at it. And until I turned blue, and then they had me in the operating room when I died, I saw, and they had my intestines out all over a big silver tray. And I was outside of my body sitting on a shelf watching them work on this woman. And I didn't know it was me. And I said, "Oh, that poor woman." And so I saw them put the paddles on her, and they keep a towel up in front of the face so that you can't see whose face it is. And so I guess after about the third time, I was back in my body again and was unconscious and didn't remember anything. The next time I died on the table, they were using the paddles, and I guess they had closed me up at that point, but were using the paddles on me. And I popped out of my body, and I was looking straight down. I was about 2 or 3 feet above my body, and I'm going, "Oh, I said, "Oh shit, that's me." That's what I said. And then I didn't, then I was slammed back in my body again. And it wasn't slammed that time. I was just gently dropped back in the body. And when I was out of my body, I saw that the surgeon, it was Halloween time, and he had a purple cap on with black cats and big yellow suns on it, or moons. And I told him when he came in to tell me I was so lucky to be alive, I said, "Yeah, I saw you." I said, "I love that cap." Everybody was ready for Halloween. He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I could see that you were wearing this hat," and I described this hat. And I described it to him, and he goes, "Somebody must have told you. You wouldn't believe me." And I said, "No, I really saw it." And he said, "Yes, Ella, somebody told you, and that's nice." And I was kind of dismissive, but those were my first 2 out-of-body experiences. Then my next big event was I attended a religious college in North Carolina. It was a small college, and I had won a national Scholastic Art Award to attend George Washington University in Washington, D.C., but I was getting my associates out of the way so I could just do my art time. And so I was raised in, my aunt and uncle had lived in Korea for a long time, and they became my legal guardians when I was 14. And so when I ran away from home at 14, and that's where they brought me into their home, and my aunt took me to the Buddhist temple. And that's where I was, learning to heal. And their beliefs are very, very similar, I know now, to the Native American beliefs of the Hopi people out here. I know I'm not really that close with any other people. I had spoken at the church about Buddhism, and I had been invited to speak at the Episcopal Church. So that's where I was speaking about it. And some of my professors were in there. And the next day when I went to class, my botany teacher told me I had to move a desk out in the hallway. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you're a heathen and I don't have to teach you in my classroom." And I go, "I'm not a heathen." I said, "It's just the way I was raised." And it really hurt me a lot to be told something like that when it was very difficult for me to get up and speak in front of people in the first place. So I was not real happy, and I was taking Old Testament. And well, at this college, there was a children's home near the agricultural school, and we would take kids on the weekends and let them stay at the dorms and treat them to the cafeteria and go to movies and games and things like that. So I was late getting in the program, so I was splitting my child with someone else. And it happened to be a very good friend of mine, Lance, and we were walking back to the children's home on Sunday, and we cut through the woods, and we were going to come down into the cow pasture, which is what we did, and we dropped the little boy off at the children's home. And so then we went back over the fence to go up and back through the woods again. So while we were running around, we started doing a little cow tipping, and cows are very lazy. If you run up a hill, they don't want to come after you. So we would push a cow and run up the hill, and got to finally the entrance of the forest again. And we're up in the mountains in North Carolina. And I was trying to learn the Sons of Abraham by 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians. And he told me that I was going to go to hell for doing that. And I said, "You are completely out of your mind." I said, "Do you think I'm going to go to hell for singing Abraham's sons?" And I told him he was a moron. And then it thundered really loud, and I had that same premonition that I was going to die. And I said, "Lance, if we don't move from this place right here, I'm going to die." And he goes, "Oh, you're just scared. That's only God bowling in heaven." And I said, being a smart ass, he must not get very many. He must be a pretty lousy bowler. He doesn't get many strikes. And then it thundered again really loud. And he said, "Come on, let's stand under this point where it sticks out over the side of the mountain." It was like a little cave, a recess. And so we stepped back in there, and he goes, "You are really shaking." And he said, "Your face is as white as a ghost." And I said, "It's because I know that I'm going to be dying in a minute." And he goes, "Oh, Ella, what time is it?" And the last thing I remember was saying 3:30. And I had borrowed a wristwatch from one of my suite mates, and it belonged to her grandmother. It was made very, very well. And she said, "Please be careful. It's the only thing I have of my grandmother's." And I said, "If anything happens to this wristwatch, it'll happen to me first." And so I said, "I won't let anything happen to it." And I said, "It's 3:30, and that's the last thing I remember." And he said, "I went straight up into the air, and my hands were out." And he said, "I had a huge grin on my face." And so I said, "Well, what happened? How long was I gone? Was I out?" And he said, "I knew you were dead because your eyes were fixed and dilated." And I had gone up in the tops of the trees, swung around, and then came down. He thought I'd broken my neck when I came out of the trees because the way my head was turning. And so I was just floored about that. But what I remember was this. After I was struck, I didn't realize I was struck because I didn't feel any pain. Obviously, you're pulled out of your body just before that happens. And as I was moving forward, I was floating through layers of fabric, it looked like, just floating through. And then it dawned on me, "Oh yeah, now I remember. Those are the different lifetimes I've had," because some had beautiful designs on them. Some of them were kind of like heavily woven, but I was floating right through them, and I heard this beautiful music. And so I started moving forward to find the music. And all of a sudden I was shot forward into the light. And when I came out on the other side of the light, I came into this beautiful, huge green field with horse fence around it. And I looked out and I saw my grandparents and my aunts and uncles who had passed on. And they were all there, but they were all young. They were like young enough for me to recognize them. I think they looked the way they knew I would recognize them. And no words were necessary. All of your communication is done through telepathy. And I saw my grandmother, and I was so excited to see her. And I saw 2 horses with her, and those were her horses when she was young. And then I looked at my grandfather, and he had every single hunting dog he had ever had, he had ever owned. He was completely surrounded by these dogs, and they were all sitting and wagging their tail. And he looked strong, and he was a big man. He was tall. He was over 6 foot and had snow white hair. So he looked really great to me. And then they were picking up animals I had when I was little, and they're waving the paw at me. And then my grandmother told me, you know, you've been called before council. You have to go before council. And the next thing I knew, my grandmother said I had to go before council, and then I was just right there. And there was this beautiful dome-shaped building that was so big, I couldn't see all the way to, you know, either end of it. And it was filled with nothing but souls, is what I was calling them. But I realized now that they were light beings. And I was recognizing them from different lifetimes by their vibration. And with the vibration, a face would show up because they didn't have faces. There was just, they were made of light and had just holes for eyes and a mouth. And so I was there, and I was told that in a very nice way, they didn't try and scold me and make me feel like I was a horrible human being, but they said that it's not my place to make a judgment on anyone else and their beliefs. And that's not why I'm here. And I am to honor all beliefs, because everyone follows the path that they need to follow in order to evolve. So someone who evolves a little faster may not be a Southern Baptist or a Methodist or whatever. They may have stepped forward into a religion they don't understand. And the one thing I found out is that I stopped saying God because it always offends somebody. So I just refer to it as divine source. And that's what I believe that's what happened. I was before a divine source that was responsible for all things in this world. And the other thing I learned that was really, really important is that we are interdimensional beings living in an interdimensional universe. And what may be absolutely correct for one person is not absolutely correct for the next person, because there are so many different opportunities to grow. And I was told not to make any judgments of them, but I had been given an important assignment, and there were a lot of people that I had to help. And so I said, but I got here fair and square. I want to stay home. And he goes, no, not yet, because it's not time for you to be home. And it was just that. It was one of the most beautiful experiences because you're filled with absolute love. It is, it's all encompassing, and it lifts you up, and it makes you feel lighter than anything in the world. I mean, just, it's fabulous. So they told me I had to go back, and this time they did throw me into my body because I wanted to stay, and I was arguing. And I told them I was here fair and square, that you can't just let people die and send them back. You have to, you know. But they said, no, that's not how this works. And so I was thrown back in my body. And since then, I try not to make judgments on people. I really try hard not to do it because I know that's not my job. And that's nobody's job. We're here to love and assist one another. That's it, period. We don't make judgments on the color of someone's skin, their nationality, hair color, you name it. It is just not important. And so I've set out to try and be more like that. I did get a couple of very special things. I had always been able to see things from the time I was a young girl. And I just figured everybody saw them, so they didn't talk a lot. So I didn't realize they were spirits around people. And also, there were angels and what have you around people. When I was a little girl, I lived with my grandparents up until my grandmother passed. And we used to go to Florida in the wintertime. And I went to sharecropper school. It was a Seventh-day Adventist school. And it was in Ocala, Florida, and it was nothing but orange groves. And I went to the school where everybody else went, a one-room school, and it was great. And everything we did, we learned from the Bible. We didn't have any other textbooks. And so I was really obedient and a good girl. And but I wanted, my grandparents were going to go to the drive-in movies with an aunt and uncle, and I wanted to go. And I told my grandparents, I'm so tired. Can I just sleep in the back of the window of the car? And so they said, well, if you fall asleep, that's it. If you fall asleep, you can do that. And so I ended up going to the movie. Well, of course, I wasn't asleep. I watched this movie, and it was scary, and I should not have been there to see it. But it had ants going across a river on leaves and eating people in their sleep, and it was a petrifying movie. And I pretended to be asleep, and it was time to go home. And we were in this little cabana where they would bring the table down and put a mattress on the two seats, and I would sleep there like on a boat. And so I was tucked in, and my grandmother and grandfather went to sleep in another room. And I lay there, and I was scared to death, and I was praying really, really hard that the ants wouldn't come and eat me, and that I was really, really sorry for lying. I knew it was a bad thing to do, but I just really wanted to see the movie, and I was explaining in my prayers why I was sorry. And so I was so scared, though, I couldn't sleep. I tried and tried, and I could not sleep. So I got out of bed, and I went into my grandmother's room, and I said, can I sleep with you and Grandpa? And she goes, okay. And I said, well, can I sleep between you two? Because I was really scared. And she said, no, Grandpa would roll over and crush you. So I was a very small child anyway. And so I'm laying in bed, and I'm still scared, and I've got the blanket pulled up around me real tight, and I was trying to cuddle under my grandmother's arm, and so she finally put her arm out around me, and all of a sudden the room was filled with just amazing light. Everything lit up, and this person who had long blonde hair and very light blue eyes, and I could see through him, didn't have wings. He had shafts of light that came out of him. And he stood about, I'd say, a foot or a foot and a half to 2 feet off the floor. And he walked towards me. And I was kind of in awe. And I said, are you an angel? And he said, where am I? Yeah, I guess you'd call me an angel here. And I said, am I going to die? Because that's what I associated it with. And he said, no, you're not going to die for a long time. You've got a lot of work to do here. He said, but I wanted to let you know. Oh, and I said, but I thought all angels were girls. And he said, no, not all of us, but would you rather I were a girl? And I said, yes, I think I'd like it better if you were a girl. And so he said, okay, next time I see you, I'll be a girl. And he said, I wanted to tell you that I will always stay with you no matter what. He said, but after this visit, you may not be able to see me anymore because your life is about to change dramatically. But I want you to know that no matter what, you just call to me and I will be there. And he said, we can work together. And, he made me feel comforted. And before he left, the light filled the room all again. And he had stooped down to get close to me, but still off of the floor, and to tell me that your life's going to change, and he said things will never be the same, but I'm afraid you won't be able to see me anymore, because I used to talk to the angels all the time as a kid, and I'd sing to them, I would dance. It was all just part of who I was, and my grandmother thought I was horrible because I used to go outside and I didn't want to get my clothes dirty. So I'd take them off and go play in the woods or I'd come back, find my clothes, put them back on, go inside. But I used to bury them. I don't know why I thought that that wouldn't get them dirty, but I didn't think about that. So anyway, we went home. And that spring, my grandmother was out picking daffodils and she died. She had a massive coronary. And when I came home from school, she wasn't there anymore. And I was her namesake. I was named after her. And I wanted to share everything with her. And she wasn't there. And I had never seen, my family has, I guess, German and Dutch background. Her family bloodline, I think, was Dutch. And she had been the family sort of wise woman. She read tea leaves and playing cards and would tell people what's going on in their lives. And she had read about her own funeral in my mother's coffee grounds. So anyway, the mirrors were all covered up with black cloth, and all of the men had black armbands on. And I'd never seen my grandfather cry before. And it was just very, very difficult for me to see him cry. And then one of my aunts took me and tried to explain everything to me. But I could not stop crying. I was inconsolable at that point. And so they agreed. I said, I just have to go see her. And so they did take me to the funeral parlor and I got to see her. And I said, well, she's not dead. I said, I can see her breathing. She's not dead at all. And what I was seeing was her above her body breathing. And so it went on that I lived with my grandfather for a long time, just the two of us. And we had different aunts and uncles that would come and stay with us. And on my grandmother's side and on my grandfather's side. And then my aunt and uncle that eventually became my legal guardians came back from Korea, where they had been living because my uncle had a heart attack and they moved back to Virginia. So I lived with them for quite a long time. And then my mother came one day and there was a horrible fight and she took me because she needed someone. She had remarried and she needed someone, she was pregnant, to take care of the babies. So that's why she came and got me. And it just, my whole life had changed because of that. And like I say, I ran away at 14 and they adopted me. They became my legal guardians. And I lived with them until I went off to school. And I'd learned so many things. But the main thing is that we're not here to make any judgments about anyone. We're here to bring light into other people's lives, aside from our own. And I love doing it because it just makes your heart feel so good to be able to help people. And I try to, if someone calls me or texts me, I will try and spend time talking with them or sending them a message of some kind. Well, here's something that happened to me when we first moved out to Maryland. Well, first of all, I was told by a psychic that I was going to be leaving my beautiful old 200-year-old farm in Western Maryland. It was called a gentleman's farm. It at one time had been a Quaker church. And it was haunted, and but they were nice ghosts. They were always very, very helpful to us. And there were 2 children. And when we'd leave to go home, I worked 4 days a week, and so did my husband. And so the house would be empty the other 3 days. So when we'd leave, I brought toys for the girls because I could see them. And I knew their ages were around 12 and 7. So, and they were dressed in clothing that was not from a period I recognize. But when the people from Edgar Casey's group came to the house, they were able to say that they were really early settlers, like the Jamestown type of people who had come. And so I didn't see them when we went to look at the house, but as soon as the house became ours, when I opened the door into the dining room to go in the house, they were standing there waving, because spirits know if you can see them or not. And then they want to make themselves known. So anyway, I was told I was going to move to Arizona, and I have family out here at the time. And I said, there is no way I'm leaving this farm and moving to Arizona. I said, I'm just not going to do it. And she said, well, I've been told that in order for you to complete your service, your agreement, you're moving to Arizona. So I said no. Then a few days later, my daughter had a stroke. It was called a transverse sinus occlusion. She was going to college out here in Arizona. And she had a very bad headache. Well, there's so much more to this, but I was hearing music all the time, and that was the angels talking to me, but I didn't know what they were trying to say. And in this house, for no reason at all, music would play really loud, like a music box that was so loud it would shake windows. And I was the only one hearing it. My husband is sleeping next to me, and he's not hearing this music, and I'm hearing it. And then I was thinking about it. I had a friend who taught me all about classical music, and that it's a mathematical equation. And he taught me to love classical music. So I thought, okay, I get it. I'm horrible at math. If you're really here, and this is really happening, because I had gone to have my head examined. I went down and they tested me for everything and came back and said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. No brain tumors, no anything else. So I'm laying in bed, and I remember it was 5:21 a.m. and I couldn't sleep because I could feel spirits around me, and I was seeing things that looked like spirits made of lights. So I said, if this is real, play a song that I will know it's you. And it started playing Close to You by the Carpenters, really loud. I mean, so loud, my husband shot out of bed, and he goes, what the hell is that? And I said, it's music. And he goes, where's it coming from? And I said, right here next to me. And he said, Ella, that's impossible. And I stood in the doorway while I pulled things out from under the bed looking for the source of the music. It kept playing. And then I went into the kitchen. I was so grateful not to be insane. I said, thank God this is real. Someone else heard it, because all of this time I was questioning my sanity. And but they always made me so comfortable and lay down, and I had pneumonia really bad, and I was laying on the sofa, and I hadn't been into the office for a long time, and I just wanted to get well, and I wanted to be able to sleep all night. And the music started playing, the lights showed up, and it was like they laid me down, and I went to sleep, and I woke up in the morning, and I was much better. So I came out. What happened was my husband went to work the next day after hearing the music. And I had been telling him, I said, I keep being told, even in meditation, I have to go move to Arizona. But I said, I don't understand why. I keep getting the number 2. And I don't know what that stands for, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades, whatever. I don't know what it means. And he went to work the next day, quit his job, and said, you stay here, set up get things packed up, and I will go to Arizona and find work, which he did. And he came out here and found a job, and I packed up the house, and I was taking me longer and longer. And then he called me to say that Mary Catherine, he had taken her to the emergency room, and the person who checked her in was a head trauma nurse. And that's what saved her life. Normally, people who come in with a migraine or try and explain blinding pain are given prescription strength Tylenol, and they're sent home, told to call their doctor in the morning. Well, if the nurse had done that with my daughter, she would have bled out in the middle of the night. She had a brain bleed. And she was 27 years old. And the nurse said, you know what, I'm going to send you down for an MRI. And they did, and they saw that she was bleeding. So the surgeon who took care of her said that I see 6 people a year like this. And he said, out of them, especially someone as young as your daughter, most people would send them home. And she was very lucky to have had a head trauma nurse there to help her. And so I came out here and stayed with my daughter, and it was like she was 13 again from 27, and she was brilliant. She had a memory where she could just look at something and memorize it immediately. So she was very, very bright. She was a very talented writer. And this changed her entire life. And she was a young single parent, so she couldn't pick up the baby or hold her, because if she straightened her feet on her mom, she could cause her to bleed. She was on very strong blood thinners because my daughter, for some reason, was throwing clots. And that's what makes that illness so bad. And so stayed out here, and I immediately started taking classes. And the first one I went to was a feng shui class. And in this classroom, it was at Changing Hands. And I think it's Xavier Braden or something like that. Xavier was teaching the class, and he came from Japan. And I had been told in my meditation, you have to move to Arizona. You have to move to Arizona. Well, he's telling his story. And he went to his teacher in Japan and said, why am I being told I need to move to Arizona? And the teacher said, if the United States were an animal, the heart of the animal would be Arizona, would be the beast, the center of the beast. And so it would make that person, that entity, shaped like a turtle, which is important in a lot of different cultures. And so he told that story. So he goes, anybody in here have that experience? About 45 of us raised our hands. We had all been told we had to move to Arizona. And a lot of people, some people sold their cars, their houses, everything they had, and just drove on out. One woman from Kansas sold everything she had. And she said, this is a gift. I know it's a gift, and I'm going out to live in Arizona. So what happened was at that point, when we all came out right around the year 2000, I came out in 1998, June of 1998. And that's when my daughter had her stroke. And we all started finding each other. in different groups. And first I had gone to see Edgar Casey's group because my aunt had been for him, and met a lot of very interesting people. And after that, just more and more interesting people. And I became part of a group called the Self-Realization Fellowship. And it was run by a gentleman named Philip Burley and his wife, Vivian. And he called me, and he called me to let me know there was a speaker coming to speak to our group at the Four Seasons, and she's going to be sharing her story of how she became a psychic, medium, and faith healer. And while he was saying this, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've only seen the faith healers on TV, and to me, it just looks really set up. But I didn't say anything, and I said, all right, Philip, if you believe that this is what I need to do, we'll do it. In the meantime, I had people coming from Washington, D.C. to visit, and we had just moved in this house, and I was painting the bathroom, and I got up on a ladder and was painting the walls in the bathroom, and I was having a tough time getting started doing that. And every time I'd look for, like, how can I open the can? Couldn't open the can of paint. And where are my brushes? I just had them, now I can't find them. It was just one thing after another. And I finally said out loud, look, whoever's standing in my way, please step away from me. I need to get this done. So they stepped away and everything fell into place. And I had painted 2 or 3 walls. And I was standing on the top of the ladder, you know, like they tell you not to do. That's for everybody else but me. And all of a sudden it hit me. I had taken my insulin and I'd forgotten to eat. And I fell from the ladder backwards, hit my head twice and broke my back. And I knew I had done something serious because I could feel the fire go through my body. And the phone was not that far away from me, but I realized I could not move my legs or anything from the waist down. So I laid there crying and saying 411, 411, but nothing happened. So I ended up, I thought, well, my hands still work. So I pulled my legs into the bathtub and I scooted around and I called my husband at work and I said, I think something horrible has happened. I think I really hurt myself. And so he came home, we went to the hospital, and I sat for 4.5 hours in the emergency room. And they thought that I went up and I said, Derek, I can't stand the pain any longer. If they can't see me, fine, I'll go home, but I know I have to lay down because I'm really in pain. And then the nurse goes, oh my God, we thought you were taken back immediately. You were supposed to have been triaged right away. And I said, well, nobody called me. And so we went in and the only table they had available was a birthing table. And I was laughing because I'm going, I'm 50 years old. Why in the world would they put me on a birthing table? But anyway, they sent me down for x-rays and came back and my back was, I had an acute fracture of the 5th lumbar and I had broken my tailbone off, and those little things, the little bones under your spine that stick out that look like fingers. I think they're called laminas, but I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I broke both of those off. And then I had a massive hematoma that it was pressing against my bladder. And they said, you may not be able to go to the bathroom because of this. You need to get right back here. And so they told me, you know, you can go home now. You just have to stay very still. And they started me on oxycodone, very strong dosages of it. And because I'm allergic to most opioids. The only one that I can take without any side effect is Dilaudid, and that's only good for 4 days. after that, it doesn't do anything for anyone, not just me. So there's no chance of getting, addicted to it. But as time went on, I was laying in bed, and all I kept seeing were these faces in stone. And when I'd meditate, all I could see were these faces in stone. And I kept hearing, even in the smallest stone, I'm there. And I'm a pen and ink artist. I do illustrations. I don't do sculpting. And I took I took a class in it with my youngest brother many, many years ago, but we both agreed we'd never use it. And so I finally said, look, God, I work in pen and ink. And I said I could use a little help here. And then I heard very clearly in my head, not externally, like someone's talking to me, but I heard, even in the smallest stone, I'm there. And I said, well, great. After I broke my back, then I was just bombarded, one right after another. Well, Philip called me and said, I want you to come hear this woman speak. So he said, I've already arranged for a ride. And so my friend Susha came to pick me up, but I didn't realize she had a little tiny sports car with really bad shocks. And I had to get in and out of this car. And so we went to the Four Seasons, and I said, please get something in the back, because sometimes I feel better if I can stand over, sitting. And she said, okay, I will. So she went back in, and it took me about 15 minutes to make it all the way to the door at the Four Seasons. And I remember standing at the door and putting my head against it and going, dear God, please help me with this pain, please. And we went in, and they were, Vivian and Philip were going, here, Ella, up front, up front. They got me a seat in the second row. And he said, Philip said, I just know you're supposed to know this woman. When I was meditating, kept being told you have to go talk to her. And so I'm in the second row, and I'm not really happy about it. Susha's sitting next to me. And this woman comes in, and she starts talking about how she became a faith healer. And I'm looking at her, and I'm thinking, well, she just looks like a regular old person to me. But she's fascinating. Her story is really amazing. And while she was talking, all of a sudden, it looked like the negative to a photograph all the way around her body. And I was seeing this opalescent and gold, cloud type thing coming towards me. And it came towards me. And when it hit me, I felt like electricity on the top of my head. And where I had whiplash, it looked like black rock that moved away from my body. And where my fifth lumbar was broken, it looked like black rock moving away from my body. And where my tailbone was broken, it looked like rock. And it went out all the way around me, out of my body. And everybody sitting around me put their hands on me. They were all jumping, trying to touch me. And they didn't know what had just happened. And so she goes, I'm sorry. The Lord just told me there's a person here who fell from a ladder, struck their head twice, and broke their back. Could that person please identify themselves? And I raised my hand just like like this, because I didn't want all these people looking at me and holding on to me, and I didn't understand what was going on. And she said, you. She said, I knew it was you. Did you notice how I kept looking at you? And I said, yeah, I did. It was making me kind of nervous. She said, when I went to the chapel to pray this morning, the Lord told me he had given you a really important assignment. Can I ask why you're not doing it? And I said, because I don't know how to do it. And she said, well, what is it? And I said, I'm seeing all of these faces in stone. And she goes, she listens for a minute. She said, well, if you choose not to do it, he can always take this healing back. And I said, no. And he said, don't worry about knowing how to do it. He's going to start sending you people to help you right away. Now, I had finished about, I think, 30, I want to say 35 stones or so. I can't remember honestly, but I I had a friend coming to have lunch with me who was a psychotherapist and who worked for hospice. So she said, Ella, when I was looking at the table and I saw these stones with faces on them, I go, what am I going to do with a bunch of stupid rocks with faces on them? And the same voice I had heard saying, even in the smallest stone I'm there, said, sit down and pick up a pencil and paper. So I sat down and I copied. It was written in gold right in front of me, one line at a time. But the first thing it said was listening stones. And I'm thinking it's a rock. How can it hear? But okay. And so when he was done, there was this beautiful poem, and it explained that they were listening stones. So when my friend arrived, I said, Jan, I said, I am profoundly dyslexic. Spelling is not one of my strong suits because I turn everything around in a mirror. That's how I would read it the right way. So I said, will you look at it and read it and tell me if I did everything right, if I spelled everything okay? And she looked up from what she was reading and she was crying and she goes, it's perfect. And I said, well, then I know I didn't write it. It was channeled to me. So she walked over and picked up the stones and she said, I know where to take them. She said, we'll take them to hospice. So she took those. And out of all the stones she took, all but 6 people did not go into remission. I don't know how they work. I've got to say, I have absolutely no idea how they work. I just know that I make a tool that is useful for people in their healing. And my favorite story, I ask people to get back in touch with me if their lives change in any way. Please let me know what's going on. And so I'm trying to compile everything so they can be part of the Book of Miracles. So, and I think it's important for people to have them because miracles do happen. They really do happen. And it's just a lack of faith, I think, that keeps that. But I've got to say, my prayer for getting rid of pain was really, really sincere by the time I got to the door of that room. And so anyway, she told me, I had another friend who said, well, come to the farmer's market at Roadrunner Park and you ought to go there and see if anybody's interested in buying your stones. So I went there, and this is in 2000, and it's after I had my miraculous healing, and I put the things out on the table. I was very shy. I didn't know how to talk about it. I'm from back east. You don't talk about things like this. In fact, my entire life I've been told, don't tell anybody you see things. Don't tell anybody you hear things. Don't tell anybody because you're going to be judged, and we don't want you to be judged. And so my grandmother had taught me most of the things that I do. And from the time I was a toddler, I was sitting in her lap while she was doing readings and things. So, I felt pretty comfortable with it. I was just never allowed to speak about it. So I'm sitting out there and I really didn't know what to say. And this young woman came over and she looked so sad. And she was looking at the stones and she picked them up. And she said, well, what's the story on these? What do they do? No, they do something. Everyone knows they do something. They just don't know what they do. And so I said, well, I was spontaneously healed of a broken back in order to make these. And then I was given this poem to go with each stone. And so she read the stone and she goes, I want to buy one. My brother is in Iowa and he has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And since he was 12 years old, he has been going through one bout after another. And she goes, he is now 44 years old. And he said he cannot go through the chemo one more time. So she said he is put himself in hospice care, and we're all going out to say goodbye to him and spend time with him before he dies. And I said, oh, well, let me give you one. And she said, no. She said, I know their value. So she insisted on giving me the money. And I found out much later on, if the money isn't exchanged, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is something else that I had to learn about, because I'm one of these people, let me give it to you. If you've got that problem, let me help you. And so anyway, I didn't see her again until we were getting ready to, we weren't going to be coming back to the market anymore, because I wanted to go back east to my little farm and start fixing it up to get ready to move back there, because Mary Catherine's doing very well. That's my daughter. And she is a good mom, and she works hard, and, you know, she's just turned out to be a very nice human being. I'm very proud of her. So we're getting ready to leave, and we're at the farmer's market. It's one of the last times I'm going to be there. And she comes up and she goes, oh, thank God you're here. She said, I went one state over. She said, because there's someone that wants to meet you. And she said, do you remember me? And I said, of course I do. You're the first person who ever bought anything from me. And you let me tell this wacky story, and you were so sincere and kind. And I felt so good. You made me feel so good that you wanted to take one of my stones to your brother. And she said, well, you wait right here. Around the corner came this fellow with a long gray beard and his hair in braids and overalls. And he picks me up and he's twirling me around, and he's thanking me for the stone. And I said, no, I don't think it's me. I was asked to make a tool. And I think it's your relationship with the divine source that is healing. And well, he was crying, and it was just, he had now lived longer without non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than he had ever lived. And so he'd lived like 20 years now. So it was a wonderful story, wonderful experience. But I've got a lot of them, because people will write to me when things change. The one that I like the best, when people may be looking for something in their life and they don't know what it is. I had 4 stones to be angels when I went home for Thanksgiving, because I knew I wouldn't be coming back at Christmas time. And I wanted everyone in my family to have an angel. And so I shipped them out ahead of time, and I insured them, and I wrapped them very, very carefully, because I buy the stones and I don't buy them wholesale, because I have to pick the stones that I'm drawn to, because I know that they belong to someone. And so I insured them because of the cost of the stone. And I said, and when they arrived, all of the angels were broken. And I thought, well, that's why I have to do what I see in the stone now. You can't force them to be what you want them to be. They all have their own message. So I opened the box and was showing her and wrapping them. They were so carefully wrapped, even in bubble wrap. So someone really would have had to whack them hard. So she held one of the cherubs in her hands, and she goes, what do they do? I know they do something. I know they do something. And she pulled me away from where the other people were. And I said, they're called listening stones. Started explaining. She goes, my mom has stage 4 breast cancer, and it's already metastasized. And she said, I just want her to be comfortable, just to be comfortable the rest of her life. And so I said, she said, can I have one of these? And I said, no, I'm not going to give you a broken angel. I said, let me go home and I'll find a stone with an angel in it and send it back to your mom. And she said, okay, that would be great. And so I did. And that was soon after Thanksgiving, I sent it back to her. Well, at Christmas, I got a Christmas card from her, and she said, now she had been engaged to a guy for 11 years. They had been together for 11 years, and they never set a date. She said, well, I've just about had it. If he doesn't propose this year, it's over. It's all done. They've been living together that long, so they knew they got along. So anyway, on the Christmas card, I didn't recognize the name, but I did recognize that it came from Potomac, Maryland. And so when I opened it up, she said, first of all, let me tell you, my mom went into remission almost immediately. No explanation. She feels great and she's doing great. And thank you. And the doctors were blown away. She said, but did you notice that I signed a different last name? She said, he asked me to marry him 2 days before Christmas. It had a big, beautiful ring and everything is perfect. And I just wanted you to know that the stones really worked. So she wanted that stone for her mom, and it worked for both of them. And so I thought that was kind of a nice thing too. I have a couple of them I can show you. This one is interesting. This is mine. It doesn't go to anyone else. I was told, she's your angel. And I'm going, well, I don't need any angel. There's nothing wrong with me. And I kept working on it, and she kept saying it's mine. So I left her in the studio and I took some other ones out. And about a month after I made her, I went to my OBGYN because I shouldn't be bleeding. And so I got an ultrasound and I didn't hear anything back from them until that was early in the spring. So I didn't get anything here back from until July. And I'm sorry, June. And she goes, my OBGYN calls. She said, Ella, I am so sorry. She said, but the results of your ultrasound went to the wrong doctor and they sat on that person's desk for a long time. But she said, I've already made an appointment with one of the best oncologists in Arizona. And she said, it looks like you have ovarian cancer. So I go, well, I said, I want to go to my niece's wedding in Maryland. And so I said, could I go to her wedding and then come back and have the surgery? And she said, no. She said, you can't get on an airplane. My ovaries, they were huge. They were about the size of a quarter pounder with cheese, one of those boxes. Both ovaries and that tumors had grown up all through inside of me. And so I work with a medicine woman, and she put me, well, I worked with her and I worked with Kahuna that she knows. And we had a 3-way phone call, and she has my stones and he has my stones. So anyway, what they do is take the photograph of a person, put the stone on top of it and do the prayers for the person. And so you have to have permission to do that because some people may not want to survive. But it ended up that we went in and they removed 11 pounds, actual pounds of tumors from my body. But I never had any pain. And they found a large green stone inside of me that everybody was going, I don't know where this came from, but he said, it looked like a green egg right in the middle of you, a big green egg. And I said, well, did you take a picture of it? He goes, no. He said, I sent it off to be biopsied. And but whatever it was not a malignant growth of any kind because it didn't come back with cancer. And and my friend who is the medicine woman in Florida goes, well, I can take the cancer, but I can't take the tumors. And the Kahuna said the same thing because there was something I had to learn from the removal of the tumors. And I think it has to do with my faith that everything would be okay. So after that, I I never question. People more or less know what they need, and they'll pick out the right stone. And I've got now this. I have a lot of Buddhas. He is done on quartz crystal because different stones do different things. And this one is to open one's mind, who's not a believer, and it's done on Moroccan quartz. And it's very expensive, very hard to find. But if anybody had a serious blood issue, I think this would be great for them. And then this one is on citrine, and he is a wisdom keeper. And I finished him recently. And I have a couple of little fairies here that work like angels. And I suggest that if you have a place to do it, hang it in the in your bedroom, wherever you put your makeup on, so you can talk to the stone about what you want to accomplish in your life or during the day and your lifetime. And I don't know, it seems they work pretty well for some people. Interesting too is that when I was on the other side, all of the knowledge from all of your lives comes together when you cross over. So it's not just this lifetime, it's all of your lifetimes. And I was told that pain has to do with karma. If you don't know what you were like in a previous lifetime or what you have to work out. Now, I've had past life regression, so I have a pretty good idea of why I had to break my back. But you know, karma is well, karma's a bitch. You have to, but don't look at it like a punishment. You have to look at it as an opportunity to grow in some other direction. Yes, the pain is horrible. I'm in pain most of the time, but you know, when I'm working, when I'm doing what I love to do, and that's being in the studio, I have no pain in my body at all. So part of my lesson is encouraging people to reach out, step out of your comfort zone. This is definitely out of my comfort zone, just doing a podcast. Because the first one I ever did, I was so nervous, I didn't even remember what I said. You know, it's very humbling to know you've been given a gift, and I feel a responsibility for people if I can produce something that might help them. You know, but like someone said, I can tell when I look at someone who says they're a healer, and when I see a real true healer, I see the balls of light above his head and over both shoulders, because there's sort of a holy trinity there. I've seen people up at Hopi, and all of them have this ball of light over them. And I would go sit on my little meditation bench that the kids had made for me, and I would sit out there with my tea and just be grateful for all of the things that I had. And sometimes that music would play so loud, and it sounded like you could hear something rattling, but I was outside. Now, inside, when it was loud, when he heard it, the windows were actually rattling, and that's what I said. This is not quiet music. And that's what I heard when I crossed over and followed it into the light. And it's such a, I would never, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm more afraid of leading up to the dying, you know, being sick or what have you. But crossing over, I know some people have had very bad times, and some people have had really good times. And if I want to catch up with someone on the other side, all I have to do is visualize them and sit back and close my eyes, and I can feel them, because you don't bring all of who you are into this lifetime. You bring a small percentage in. So You can be spread in other lifetimes or on the other side. You can be all kinds of places. But if I need a concept, or if I'm trying to figure something out, or the answer to a question, those light beings that I saw when I crossed over are in my studio. They come to my studio and will answer questions. And I've only had one other person who actually saw them, was a woman who came to talk to me about her son, who was heavily involved with drugs and was becoming very abusive to people. And she was afraid he was going to die. And sadly, when I asked the questions, they told me all she can do is love him, because this is his journey. This is what he has to heal himself from, this journey. And people just need to know that they carry this responsibility. If there's something wrong in your life, you've put yourself there, and you can remove yourself. And once you start doing that, then Source is going to jump right in and jumpstart your life in the biggest possible way. What I would tell my younger self would have been to have more faith in myself, to have seen myself as being much wiser than I believed I was. I'm very, very trustful. I'm outrageously honest about things, so I lose friends because I don't sugarcoat anything. And I don't mean to be so blunt, but if something's coming through me, I'm not going to change the way it's worded. So I've had issues with that. I'm in Arizona, and I can give you the address of where people, the only gallery in town that I know of that has my stones. And this place is called Storm Wisdom, and its address is 3375 East Shea, Shea Boulevard, Suite A1, Phoenix, Arizona, 85028. And my email address is Boonsboro, BOONSBORO, at WriteMe, WRITEME.com. And there's a website where you can go and look at stones. I don't sell them from there. And you can see some of the other things that I make. I make wands to help people with pain. But I've stopped making them. I recently had 2 very bad surgeries. I fell and broke my neck and my back. And so I was put back together again to do this. That is naturalwondersart.com. It's www.naturalwondersart.com. And you can see the type of things I have there. I keep a few stones here for people who stop by and purchase a stone by themselves. I think the thing we need to remember is that we're here to be kind, loving individuals. And when we're like that, we're assisted in so many ways. And I don't know, I feel a great feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction in being able to assist other people. And I know I was answering texts and letters from another podcast, and someone said, my husband said, you've got to stop reading these letters because they're heartbreaking. Most of them are heartbreaking letters. And these people deserve an opportunity to know that they've been heard. And I've answered so many of them. I now know that I'm channeling them because the spelling's fine. I go, oh God, it doesn't hurt so bad now. I'm channeling advice that they need. So that's helping me out a lot. everybody has that ability. I think that's probably the best advice.